In this video, we're fisting a Fender. Stay tuned. Welcome back or to the channel. Today we are changing out a Fender, and I talked about this in a few videos. I'm not going to link any of them because it was only a quick thing that I talked about, but I did talk about an easy way to do rust repair without having to do painting. Today we're going to go ahead and tackle one of those projects, and how we're going to go about doing that is we're going to remove this Fender that has a fist-size hole, literally, in the fender. With a fender that we have sourced from a salvage yard. Now, this fender is not perfect by any means. It does have rust coming in right here, which is a similar spot to what we already have, but it's not a fist-size hole. It's a little scratched up on the bottom, but where it's scratched right here, we do need to paint to match. So there will be a painting project to follow this at some point. Because what we need to do is match this color. Again, I have a trick for that. I know how to do that one to where we're going to be able to get this looking almost identical to this. So the plan is we're going to go ahead and knock this fender off, and then we're going to replace it with the one that we have. Now, there are certain things you're going to need to know when disconnecting a fender. If you're disconnecting on a passenger side, you may have air boxes, you may have coolant tanks, you will have brackets and stuff that you will have to remove. You're going to have an inner wheel liner that you'll have to contend with. I did grab the one off of the vehicle, so I do have that stock wheel liner. But if I feel like that one's just too cumbersome and I don't want to deal with it, I'll use my fender clip tool, pull those out, and get those out of the way. The other thing that we're going to have to fight is there is going to be hidden bumper bolts behind here. You can see it on this bracket right here. So there's one fender bolt right here, and that one we'll have to wrestle to get out. We also have to put our whole front assembly here. We can't leave that assembly in there. We have to pull it out to get the headlights out, get all that stuff out in order to be able to do this project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up with a few tools on a different setup here. We're going to start on the top because that makes the most sense. What we want to do is get our air box out of the way. We want to get our coolant tank out of the way. We're going to go ahead and disconnect this bracket, but I'm going to disconnect it from here because one trick you're going to want to know when doing this, try to save as many alignment points as possible. This hood has alignment in the latch right here. If I disconnect it here, I have to try to realign this hood. But if I disconnect it right here, this is only a single bolt that's easy to align. So I'm going to go that route, but I will also need to support my hood because I'm taking this spring pressure away. So there's nothing to hold the hood. So I will have to engineer something for the hood. But let me go ahead, get set up with a few things, and I'll be right back with you. Okay, now that I'm back, here's where we're at. We're going to start disconnecting, and what I'm going to do is start with my mass airflow here. I'm going to disconnect this wire, and I'm also going to start pulling my air box. Now, I just did a video on an air box. We went back to stock with this one. I thought that maybe this was a problem, that it was pulling too much cold air. We've been having some hard starting issues with this, and I'm slowly narrowing it down. There's only a few things left that it could be. One of them is going to be, well, both of them are kind of expensive, but one is way more expensive than the other. And I'm going to try the cheaper option because I believe I can get my hands on some used parts to test it. And if I test it and find out that that is what's wrong with it, I'm just going to go ahead and buy all new setups. That way I know it's good to go and I don't have to worry about this issue anymore. If it doesn't go that way, then I'm going to be a little bit more frustrated, because then I'm looking at possibly having a bad computer in here, that when it gets cold, the connections in the computer are pulling farther apart to where the electricity has to arc across in order to pull the connection to be able to start the vehicle. I've gone through and put a starter in here, I've put wires in here, I've put a battery in here, I've put an alternator in here, I've replaced the upper intake, which was, I believe, a 6-part video series that I have on the channel here. I do have now, like I said, down below, the air box that I swapped back to a stock air box, stock air filter, stock everything, just to narrow down what's going on with this thing. And I'm down to only maybe having an issue with coil packs, and I'm going to put coil packs, plugs, and wires in it next, and if that doesn't do the trick, then I'm probably looking at a computer, and I'm going to run it as long as I can. When it dies, it dies. I'm not too concerned about that. So what I'm going to do is just slide my mass airflow sensor off. Try to slide it out of the way so I don't hit it when I'm pulling the stock air box out. Okay. Okay. It's gonna fight me, so I'm just gonna go ahead and remove the rest of this intake here. How I'm gonna pull that is this clamp right here. Now, that I just put this in here and it's still causing me issues. It's not as bad as what it was, but it's still bad enough that when it gets real cold out, I still have issues with it. So I will be looking at changing up my processes here. I'm gonna switch gears and see if I can find something else that's causing the problem. This tube is always difficult to remove. Half the time it doesn't want to come out very well. But once you get it loose, just slide it up out of the way. Be careful not to bang your mass airflow sensor. It is very delicate. It does not take being hit and pushed around. So be very careful with your mass airflow sensor. Okay, now that we got that, all we gotta do is lift our air box up and out of here. Now, this one was supposed to be in there, pushed down to where it clipped in. I believe my tray was a little off, so it didn't really clip in like it was supposed to. So when I put the new fender on, I'm gonna wanna try to align that bracket as much as possible. So now what I'm looking at is I have this tray down here. And I also have this plastic up here. So this plastic has to get pulled, and these are just fender clip tools, so I'm going to use that here in a little bit. And then I'm also going to have to use my 10mm to get this tray out of here. And I'm going to want to pull this reservoir bottle. It looks like I have a bolt here, and this one looks pretty rusty, so I'm going to have to be careful with that bolt right there. And then I also have another mounting bolt on the back side right here. And then obviously there's some 13mm up here that we're going to pull, and we're going to pull our headlights, turn signal, and our grill assembly. That stuff all has to come out in order to make this work. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my fender clip tool. We're going to pop those headlights out as we're doing the fender clip. So There we go. Like I said, these just pull up real easy. Once you get them up, you can pop the centers completely out if you want. Especially if it doesn't want to, clip doesn't want to pop up and out like that one just did. Make sure you don't lose those clips, because otherwise you're going to have to buy new clips, and you don't want to have a situation where you don't find them and then you wind up running them over and wrecking them. So what I do is I just save them all and put them in one spot. That way I got them all organized. And all these clips are going to be the same process that you're seeing me do. So I'm just going to go to it, knock these out, and get this panel off of here. Okay, with the last one off here, I can go ahead and take and set my clips down and lift my panel off. So far, with the disassembly we've done, all we've needed is a Phillips screwdriver and this pliers. That's about to change. What I'm going to go for next is I'm going to go ahead and pop my headlights out. Now, GM uses metal clips. These metal pins are all that hold the headlight in. There's two on each side. Bring you in a little closer so you can see these. So, you get one up here and one up here. And all you do to get these off is pop it loose, lift it up. Once you've pulled all four, two for each side, you can then slide your headlights out and disconnect them. Now you want to be careful because you don't know how old your headlights are. The bulbs could be really old, and if you bang them around too much, you could wreck them. So just take the time to carefully slide your headlights out. Try not to pull on the wires. Especially if you're dealing with a vehicle that has a lot of older wiring, you don't want to run the risk of wrecking the wires by pulling on them too hard. Okay, and there are two connections, a high beam and your low beam. So how you got to reach this one is reach in behind here with your thumb, pull the tab and press down. And it's the same here, you just pull it out and press it down. I'll see if I can get better angles on the other side. I don't think I'm going to though. It's kind of a tough spot. So now that I got this, slide this out. Okay, it's probably the best angle that I'll get you here. So just take your thumb, pull both tabs out, and then lightly just wiggle it down. Don't force it, because you don't want to break these little plastic tabs or pull on this wire. Okay. So now that both of my headlights are out, next I can go for my turn signals and my running lights. And how you can do that is there is a tab right here. Right there is the tab. So what you do is you press that tab in towards you and wiggle your light out. It'll pop out just like that. Okay. Now that it's popped out, you slide it out like this and then disconnect. This is going to be a turn here. Okay. And then you've got a little tab just like that one. Turn it again. Okay. And then this one's just a twist. That's all it is. Okay. Now that this is out and out of the way, we can take a look at this. These clips have a little tab right here. You got to press this tab in when you twist it. And when you go to put it back in, you'll hear that tab click. But you got to remove both sides because you're pulling the grill. Okay. Sometimes these, the white ones here, which are for your daytime running lights, the connectors themselves go bad. So this is a good time to check the connector. If your connector looks all burnt, you may want to just take the time to rewire in your daytime running lights with a brand new connector. Those bulbs get extremely hot, and sometimes it's better to just replace them. A lot of people lately have been going with the LEDs. Once you go with the LEDs, you don't get that burn anymore. Which is the reason why a lot of people have gotten away from incandescent lighting, due to that exact same reason. So I'm going to have to be very gentle with this thing. It's not going to take a whole lot of hard pulling on it before I'm going to start wrecking stuff. And I need to make sure I get it disconnected completely before I start pulling on it. Okay. One area you got to look at are these clips right here. It's a Phillips screwdriver, and you have to turn this carefully to not break these. These can get extremely brittle, and if these break, then you've got no way to mount your grill. But you want to carefully loosen up all of these plastic tabs. Okay. Once you've got those four done, under normal circumstances you'd have to disconnect this one right here, but mine is already broken into several different pieces. I didn't choose to buy a new grill. It's a truck with 300,000 miles. I don't know how much I want to spend into it, especially until I get that hard start cold thing fixed. If I can fix that, I might just do a custom grill. We'll swap it on the channel. But for today, our project is this fender. Now what we have left to get this out is we have a very weird clip that holds this side of the grill on. Okay? We have to be careful in disconnecting this because we don't want to break this. Because like I said, then you're forced to buy a new grill. Okay. So what I see is a little metal clip, and then I'm going to try to press the tab to release it. Just like that. Like I said, it's a little bit more difficult because you're trying to do it. This side, we're not replacing the fender. So I need to be a little bit more cautious. The other side, I wasn't too concerned about it. Knowing how bad it shoots out, make sure you tuck your light bulbs in. Don't leave them out here for when this comes shooting out. Okay, just like that. Now our grill should come out. Now, if you have any block heaters or anything like that, this is a good time to be careful with them. Tuck them back through the grill. And we're going to have to put that one back in there. What you're going to do is carefully lift this up because you don't want to risk catching it or damaging it in the process. Once you've got it, just take and set it out of the way. Because you really don't want that in the way for what comes next. So now that we're completely disconnected, at least as far as that goes, what we're ready for is our battery tray. But this is actually our air box tray, not our battery tray. We need to disconnect this bracket, and then start disconnecting all the bolts for the fender. Now we're going to take this process a little slower than I did when I removed that one. When I removed that one, the bumper was already off. It was in a salvage yard. Everything was already disconnected. It saved me a bunch of time. I didn't have to do all this. But now that I'm here, now I will have to start being a little bit more careful on how I disconnect this. So what we're going to shoot for is this battery tray. Now this is all 10 millimeters, and then I'm going to have 13 millimeters. So I'm going to grab those two with my ratchet, and I'm going to do a 3/8 drive on this, just because I want to be able to get some torque down if I need it, but at the same time I want to be a little bit careful about what I'm doing. So 10 mil, 13 mil, two different size extensions, and your 3/8 ratchet. Now this trick that we're doing with this fender, you can do this too if you have a fender that got dented and, let's say you had a minor fender bender in the winter and you didn't turn it into insurance, but now springtime comes and you go, I don't want to look at that ugly thing. You can go to the junkyard, find one that's already painted to match your vehicle, and swap the fender. The trick I'm going to tell you is when you're going to look for the fender, don't necessarily try to aim for the color you want, because a lot of salvage yards will up the price. If they know you're looking for a certain color, they may charge you because you're not having to paint it. So you're going to pay extra at the salvage yard. So that's where you're going to want to call around. Call around and ask how much is it for a fender. And then once you've asked, okay, if it's this much for a fender, then you ask, okay, well, what color vehicles do you have in your yard? And if they go, well, we have a black, we have a blue, we have a green, we have a red, then you can go, okay, well, I'll be there and I'll take a look at, give them two different color options. But go look at the one you want and the color you want. As long as the fender's good, you can either have them pull it or you can pull it. And now you've got your panel for replacement. Now I am setting bolts up on my cowl area. That is not necessarily the best thing to do because if they fall, you're going to lose them down inside here. But while I'm disconnecting these, I tend to set stuff up there. And then once I have everything connected, what I'll do is I'll take and set it with the part. That way I know, okay, those bolts go with that part. So here's my tray. I'm going to go ahead and set all my bolts on the tray, and then I'm going to go set my tray over with my other parts. Okay, next step is we are going to aim for our coolant reservoir. You want to be careful with this coolant reservoir. It's very old, and I don't want to risk cracking it. I try to avoid banging it on anything. I try to avoid hitting my wrench against it, which is why I'm holding my one hand up here. I'm not moving it. And that's just so as I turn the wrench, I don't accidentally bang that coolant reservoir. One of the tricks with the coolant reservoir is it does clip down into the fender. I'll show you that here in just a bit. Okay, I wanted to make sure it moved. So it clips down into the fender. Right down in here. A little hard to see because there isn't much of a gap, but it clips down in there. You should be able to see it right down there. So what you do is slide it up. Now you're free and clear. And what you're going to want to do is set this off to the side. Now be careful, there are wires connected to it. There's hoses connected to it. Okay, this is getting kind of long. I don't want to miss anything on this fender change. It's important I show every step. So rather than just trying to rush through it or clipping out things that you guys might need if you're ever doing this, I'm going to go ahead and end this here. This is going to be about a 4-part series of changing out this fender. So this will be the end of part 1. I'll be doing part 2 here yet this week. But I'd like to say thank you for watching. Please hit that like button. Smash that subscribe button, and I'll see you on the next one.